Hello everyone and welcome back to Granted Gardens. Here we are in our grow station in the basement, and I am here to prove to you that it is quite possible to grow tomatoes throughout the winter. Check these out. These are our Tiny Tim tomato plants. I had started these guys right at the beginning of the winter, and we had set them up down here in our grow station all winter long, and I was really curious to see if we were actually going to get tomatoes out of them, and sure enough, it's happening. Look at these, they're absolutely loaded. What's really nice about the Tiny Tim tomato plants is that the plant itself stays pretty small. Right now we have it here in these little red solo cups, but the plants themselves stay pretty small, and you get tons of tomatoes off of a tiny plant. Now, today what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to try and up pot these. So as you can see here, we've got 6 plants in 6 red solo cups here on just a black tray with no holes in it, okay, and sitting in our grow station. So they have been like this completely fine up until this point, but I just would like to give them more room to see if they'll do better. But to be honest, right now they're doing pretty well. You can see here on this leaf, it started to get sunspots on it. This was when we had them up on a higher shelf. We had started these up on a higher shelf in our grow station where the light is a little bit closer to the plants, and I probably waited a little too long to move them down to where the light was further away, and that's where you're seeing these sunspots from. But it's okay, the plant is still fine. I moved them just in time and all is well. But I do think that I would like to try and up pot these and see if by giving them a little bit more room, if maybe they'll be happier. Alright, so I'm here with my tomatoes. I'm going to try and up pot them. Now, this is the first time I've ever done anything like this, growing tomatoes over the winter time, okay? So I am by no means a professional at what I'm trying to accomplish. However, I'm doing alright because I'm currently succeeding. So, you know, I'm just kind of playing this by ear. Now, all of these tomato plants actually have tomatoes on them. I'm not entirely sure that this is the best time to be up potting a tomato, and I would probably lean towards not. In a normal situation, you would want to up pot your tomato before the tomatoes started forming. However, like I said, we're in an experimental phase, and my goal is to just do everything I possibly can to get as many tomatoes this winter. So I've got my pots here, my little buckets that I'm going to up pot them in, my tomatoes, and some soil, some potting mix. Now I've already gone ahead and put some potting mix in these buckets. The potting mix that I did have was outside and frozen, and so we brought it in and it thawed out, but it's just very damp, so I probably won't need to water these much. But I'm gonna just go ahead and up pot my tomatoes. I was really hoping to do this on like a surface so that I didn't get my tablecloth dirty, but you know, my tablecloth's already dirty, so here we go. So again, these are the Tiny Tim tomatoes from M.I. Gardener. And why I decided to use these for this experiment was because I grew them for the first time over the summer, this past summer. And I just loved like how tiny the plants were. I mean, they really don't get bigger than this. This is really as tall as they get and about as wide as they get. And I just thought it was really neat that they were so petite and at the same time so prolific. I had gotten so many tomatoes off of these plants, and we were picking almost every single day from these plants and getting a ton of tomatoes, and yet it was taking up hardly any space. So we had talked previously about how we wanted to experiment with growing stuff in the basement over this winter, and I just thought that these tomatoes would be the perfect ones to do because, again, they take up such little space. Now notice when I let him go, oh, that dirt helped, but he kind of wants to fall over. That was another thing that I experienced when I grew them this past summer, was that they get very top heavy because they're such tiny little plants, and because they end up growing so many tomatoes. So you do need to be prepared to stake them up somehow, or again, you know, up potting them to the point where you can bury them a little deeper in the soil. Now what else I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just snip off the bottom branches here of this tomato plant, and they're small enough I can just use my fingers my fingernails. And I'm gonna bury deeper, as deep as I can. Now we just want to make sure that we're not taking off any of the stems that actually have tomatoes on them. But we want to bury this as deep as possible so that we can give them a nice sturdy root base. With tomato plants, the deeper that you bury them, the more roots that they will have. The little fibers that you can see at the bottoms of tomato plants or along the main stem of a tomato, those little fibers will turn into roots. So essentially, the deeper that you bury your tomato, the more roots it'll have, more root system, more support from its root system it'll have. All right, now I would keep going, but I also need to be conscious of the amount of soil I have. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and pick off suckers. Because we really have the goal of just producing as much fruit as possible on this plant, and we really don't need the plant to get much bigger. Having the plant grow suckers or expand its plant self is not going to meet the expectations that we have for this. So I've explained this in many of my other videos. A sucker is essentially a new sprout of the plant that grows in between the joints of the current tomato plant. So if this is the main stem and then you have a new shoot that comes off, the sucker will kind of grow out between those. All that I have to do here is just pinch that off, and we're going to take that out. Now if you'd like, you can put this in water and root this, and this will turn into a whole new tomato plant for you. So we will set that aside. I'm going to try that. And so then essentially this is what we have left over. So I'm going to keep doing that with the rest of my tomato plants, and I'll show you guys what they look like when they're done. So there you have it, my up-potted Tiny Tim tomatoes. This is my way of making sure that we have tomatoes year-round. I'm really pleased with being able to grow tomatoes in the wintertime. So this is a really cool thing to know how to do, especially with the world that we're living in nowadays, and that sometimes you can go to the grocery store and what you're looking for isn't always there. And tomatoes are a necessity in life. So knowing that it's something we can grow right here at home takes a little bit of pressure off the grocery store. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I look forward to sharing more with you soon.